Recently, Love is Blind has been in the spotlight not just for the live reunion debacle that never happened, and not just for how many questions weren't asked once it finally did air, but for poor treatment of their contestants. Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is Tamara Lynette Tells. In this video, I'm going to show you Instagram videos from Danielle and Nick from season 2 of Love is Blind and Clara from season 12 of Married at First Sight. In their videos, these former reality participants are speaking out against Kinetic Content, the production company that produces Love is Blind and Married at First Sight. So just to give you a little backstory, their responses were prompted by an article Insider wrote about Love is Blind, like regarding contestant allegations of being deprived of food, water, having to surrender their cell phone for 10 days, no TV or radio, bad living conditions, being overworked and underpaid, producers preying on their anxieties, being forced to stay in their living quarters or pods 24/7, which meant they only saw daylight when they went to the restroom. But not only did they have to be escorted to the restrooms, but they were escorted by production assistants who were given explicit instructions not to talk to the contestants, which just added to their feelings of isolation. And let's not even mention their fear of quitting the show because their contract lists a $50,000 fine for leaving early, and engaged couples are obligated to show up to their wedding even if they don't want to marry their partner, which of course gives them dramatic I don'ts. Now, I did a video a few weeks ago that talked about a 2022 pending lawsuit from a former Love is Blind cast member, Jeremy Hartwell, who is suing Netflix and Kinetic Content for these exact reasons. So Kinetic Content replied to his lawsuit as having no merit and insinuated that Jeremy was feeling salty about not making a connection. So that's the backstory. So here's what Danielle had to say after that article was released.
So you may have seen this article by now, and I wanted to touch on a few things. First, the psychobell. There was a 30-minute screening with the psychologist in where I talked about my past and current mental experiences, as well as my past suicide attempts and traumas. And it ended with, well, it sounds like you're okay now. So looking back, I probably shouldn't have agreed to go on the show, and I really wish I was more educated and self-aware at the time, but I also did trust that the psychologist would not choose people that they did not deem mentally fit. And because of the premise of Love is Blind, I actually thought it was going to be different. So during the show, the producers were constantly bringing up past traumas in order to break you down emotionally and get the reaction that they wanted. And I also thought that the things that I disclosed in the psychoval were confidential. Reliving these things every single day was tough. Next, I want to talk about Mexico. So Nick and I were about to head out to the couples party, but last second they said that I couldn't go because they thought I had COVID, which was weird to us because we had been together 24/7. And Nick could see my anxiety already starting to boil up, so he asked the producers to leave someone there with me that I trusted. That didn't happen. I got in my head even more, wondering why they actually didn't want me to go, as well as thinking about whether or not I disclosed too much too soon to Nick about some very sensitive subjects. So that's when I had a full-blown panic attack and went into the closet because I was scared that they were hitting cameras. When Nick got back, I refused to be filmed, I refused to be mic'd because I was still hyper anxious. And they sent Nick in mic'd because he had no idea what was going on so that they could pick up my voice. Nick realized what had actually happened and also that I was alone the entire time. He actually took off his mic and threw it at producers saying, "We are done, you're not exploiting us anymore, let us leave." I then told them that I had tried committing suicide in the past, that I wasn't trusting myself, that I was having suicidal ideations, and that I had to go home. Right after I said that, everyone from production, the crew, ran over to try and persuade us to stay, but no therapist. So constantly have in the back of your head the $50,000 fine, whether or not they'd enforce it. I really wish that they would have just let me leave in Mexico, because not only did that impact my mental health moving forward throughout the entire experience, but Nick's experience as well. And after filming, I was in such a dark place that it not only impacted Nick, but every single person that cares about me. After filming, I did decide to take a leave of absence from work to attend an outpatient trauma therapy, but I'm still struggling. I might get sued for this, but I really just hope that it teaches Kinetic to treat their contestants as human beings, and I also hope that it helps viewers give contestants more grace when they're watching. I often get asked why some people say that they had a positive experience, and one, your experience is highly dependent on how ethical your producer is. Two, there are a lot of people who do benefit from the relationships that they have with Kinetic and Netflix, and I can't blame them for that. But the thing that wasn't mentioned is that while in Mexico, the only way we could get room service was through our TVs. Two, our TVs were disconnected. There are bodyguards outside of the hotel room to make sure you don't leave. Luckily, we had a swimming pool and were able to make friends with the people within the swimming pool in order to get food and water. And there's so much more.
So, in response to Danielle's video and the article, Clara released her own video on Instagram and TikTok.
In case you're not coming from Danielle's video, an article came out earlier this week talking about how Love is Blind contestants are speaking out about the poor treatment from Kinetic content while they were filming the show. And while I was not on Love is Blind, I was on Married at First Sight, which is another show produced by Kinetic content. And when I tell you, being on that show was the most traumatic experience of my and my family's lives. I've struggled with depression and anxiety for years. I've been on every medication. I've had so many therapists. I'm really on top of my mental health. Before you get cast on these shows, you go through a psych eval and they say, you're fit to be on this show. But nobody sits you down and talks about the mental and emotional toll that filming these kinds of shows is gonna take on you. I had never before that had any sort of self-harm or suicidal tendencies, and I wanted to kill myself filming that show. Love is Blind and Married at First Sight are both like real life shows in the sense of like you are working your full-time job. So you're working 40 hours a week and then you're filming 60 hours a week on top of that. So you are absolutely at your wit's end from week one. Contractually, producers cannot force you to say or do anything, but they have a scene that they want to get and they will get it whether you want to give it to them or not. They also fill the casting areas with hidden cameras that they tell you are there only for your safety. And if you don't talk about the things that they want you to talk about, they will use that footage against you. That's exactly what happened to me. I wouldn't talk about my sex life, but I did with the girls privately, and they aired that clip like 1,000 times. I had a situation in which my ex-husband and I were in a conversation with somebody very prominent on the show, and I was essentially forced into talking about the fact that I had been sexually assaulted on camera, which is something I had specifically told them that I never wanted to talk about on camera. The reaction to me saying that I had been sexually assaulted on camera was for this person to basically say, well, that's not your husband's problem. You need to be in therapy. You need help. And so rightfully, I had a complete breakdown and I went into the bathroom and was like, I need to cry and like be alone for a minute. And literally the minute I opened the bathroom door after I'd collected myself, there's a camera in my face and the producers are saying, you need to talk about this. You need to talk about this. We're not leaving until you talk about this. Like I literally just told you guys I've been raped before. And you really want to put a camera in my face right now? Go fuck yourselves. But unsurprisingly, anything that puts production in a bad light doesn't make it to air. Not only that, but like my ex-husband was really, really big on keeping secrets, and producers are really, really big about getting secrets out of you. And so I was in this like constant war between him and production where I was always going to be in the wrong in somebody's eyes, and it literally like pulled me apart. People who watch my season will tell you that there's an absolute massive tangible difference between who I was at the beginning of the show and who I was at the end. People say I lost my sparkle, and I tell people all the time that the person that I was before I went on that show died. She doesn't exist anymore. And my friends and I could tell you 100 more stories like this.
Okay, so some Married at First Sight cast and a production assistant commented on this video. Michaela from season 13 said, I wholeheartedly regret going on that show. It killed me and continues to be detrimental to my mental and physical health every freaking day. Clara responded, I hate it so much for literally all of us. Now, I did a video several months ago about Michaela calling the show fake. You may want to check that one out if you haven't seen it already. Christina from season 11 of Married at First Sight commented, thank you so much for saying this. And Clara responded, here's hoping I don't get sued. And finally, one of the production assistants who was assigned to Clara and Ryan chimed in. She said, I was your PA for this show. I can attest to this. It was so toxic, I quit working for them. Glad you are doing better. Clara replied, I wish I can pin this. This comment is so validating. Hope you're doing well. I have to say it's brave to speak out like this, given that reality show contracts usually state that you can't disparage the show, and there can be a steep monetary penalty for doing this. Now, Nick has uploaded a few videos and statements about Love is Blind. starting with this one. He captioned it, Kinetic and Love is Blind are in full propaganda mode, aka deny and lie. Reality TV cast members are human beings that deserve basic human rights and mental health support as they try to navigate the experience before, during, and after production. So in this first snippet that he points to, it says, in a statement shared with The Hollywood Reporter, Kinetic Content responded to the insider story by saying, the well-being of our participants is of paramount importance to Kinetic. We have rigorous protocols in place to care for each person before, during, and after filming. This comment in the black box is from Nick, and he says, if that were the case, wouldn't bringing the on-set mental health professional to the scene when a cast member experiences a panic attack be the best protocol? He is, of course, referring to Danielle's statement earlier of what happened to her in Mexico. Okay, so in this post, Nick has responded to fans who say he signed up for this. He added this statement. You signed up for it, random internet person. I signed up for a psychologically based love experiment sold as different from other reality shows. Love is Blind Season 1 made a believer out of me, and I thought the experience could work for me if I went with good intentions and stayed true to myself. The vetting process included psych tests and evaluations, background checks, and assurance the cast member selected is ready for marriage. The psychologist that conducted my evaluation even spoke with my therapist to verify the ethics and conditions of the show out of concern it would diminish progress made by my mental health journey. None of this was true. I lost 15 pounds in the 3 weeks in the pods and Mexico from limited access to food and water. Aside from the psych evaluation, there was no mental health support before, during, or after. Thankfully, I had the luxury of a therapist once we were back in Chicago and post-show. In Mexico, producers withheld my partner experienced a panic attack and sent me into the hotel room to film anyway. If there were mental health professionals on set, as Kinetic claims, wouldn't a person suffering from a panic attack be an appropriate time to utilize them? You are isolated from everyone and virtually everything for days at a time with no phone, internet, communication with family and friends, or other cast members. Finally, the pay equates to roughly $7.14 per hour and the promise of a social media following. That's it. If you haven't experienced reality TV show firsthand, you have no idea what you're signing up for. I did not sign up for this. So there you have it. The ugly underbelly of reality shows is being exposed once again. Some of the reasons networks like reality shows are because they're cheap to produce compared to scripted. They don't have to follow union rules, which is why they can pay whatever they want and don't have to adhere to strict guidelines in terms of lunch breaks, food quality, and living conditions. Given that there is a writer strike looming, I wouldn't be surprised if more reality shows popped up in the next few months, unless there happens to be a resolution that is agreed upon soon. Will these cast members affect change to how non-union shows treat their cast? Not likely. Since there's no shortage of people who are willing to shoot their shot at their 15 minutes of fame for free or cheap, I doubt there'll be an incentive for change. Not to mention, there are a lot of productions that fall under the non-union umbrella, starting as low as student films to low-budget indie films to reality shows and more in between. Many can't afford to pay their cast and crew, so they often work in exchange for the footage for their reel and the experience on their resume. It would be nice if they could find a way to create standards for higher budget productions like Love is Blind and Married at First Sight, but then it comes down to who is they? Given the nature of the shows, that these casts only work one season, then go back to their previous lives, so to speak, like never to appear on TV again. So it makes it difficult to find a large enough group of people who are willing to band together and fight for better standards and practices. Plus, being that they are non-union and don't fall under the Screen Actors Guild, I'm not quite sure who they would fight for these rights when we're talking about non-union productions in general. Food for thought. Well, that's all I have for now. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in my next video.